Tudor Shaft informal settlement is located in the valley, densely populated because of its agricultural value and the presence of gold mines. The surface area belongs to the municipality. No operational activity have been performed on the site, and people have built informal dwelling on the TSF from the gold plant. 2 dams were constructed as a return water dams from the gold plant. More than 400,000 people derive their drinking water via one of the dams. The water is also used for personal hygiene. The National Nuclear Regulator classifies the site as the existing exposure scenario, and in July 2010, during the rainy season, a radiological survey at the Tudor Shaft informal settlement was conducted using a Geiger counter. The NR report showing level of radiation in excess of 4 millisievert per annum in close proximity to houses. Measurement only include beta emission as the soil was moist following rain, inhibiting measurement of alpha emitters. Emission level and sampling on the water dam results exceeding the regulatory limits. Based on the NR recommendations, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy are issuing a directive ordering to resettle those people living in 10 meters of the TSF and starting with the remediation operations. Whatever, the implementation of the directive was challenged by the residents who felt they were not properly consulted. Another challenge was the absence of regulatory requirement documented for remediation. There was a regulatory document for planning exposure providing guidance and requirement for facility decommissioning and rehabilitation, but not for legacy site. In absence of regulatory requirement, no impact study to determine exposure of the community during the remediation operation was conducted. The NR are developing a regulatory guidance RG 026, documenting the process to be following for land remediation. One of the focus is on site categorization. The process following is to identify a contaminated site using a survey and to categorize it. Sampling programs should be conducted to analyze the main radionuclides such as the long-life alpha emitter and beta emitter. The dose assessment should be performed to establish the maximum exposure for a year at the time of the assessment as well as the peak dose. The result of the safety assessment should be evaluated against the 1 to 20 millisieverts per annum criteria. The priority is given to the site where the annual effective dose is higher than 20 millisieverts. Whatever, the site categorization is also determined by the inputs from interest and affecting party, the availability of pond, the deployment of available remediation technique. In general, the NR recommends that once the value of 0.5 becquerel per gram per nucleide is exceeding, remediation should be considering. Once the site has been decontaminated, a site survey should be prepared. The site can be released with or without restriction depending on the final result of the nucleide specific survey and the dose exposure to the public specified in the NR Act. In 2015, a consulting company, SCRAD, has conducted a radiological public safety assessment for Tudor site in the aim to determine the radiation dose and the associated radiological risk to which the residents are exposed. This dose and risk stem from the dust and radon source released from the tailing facility as well as the external exposure from the source material. The assessment was performing firstly for the current living condition in the settlement and secondly during the possible tailing removal with 3 scenarios. Mass tailing contain elevated concentration of natural radionuclide from elements in the uranium decay chain. IRPA 1983 was used as reference in the selection of the radionuclide with appropriate half-life for the assessment. The area assessing was expanding. The area assessing by the NR in 2010 is represented by the grey outline. The new area selecting comprise the settlement is populating with 1,800 people. Near the settlement are 2 abandoning TSF. The exposure pathway were investigated. Mathematical models were used to quantify the exposure in terms of radiation dose and true air dispersion relating to various locations around the study area. Exposure period for the residents of Tudor Shaft were assuming based on their expecting human action, behavior, and habits. Radiological assessment quantifies the amount of radioactivity to which residents are exposed to true external and internal exposure for the whole year. 3 receptor locations, R1, R2, and R3, based on the distance 0, 45, and 150 meters from the Tudor tailing, deeming as the high exposure areas were chosen. The current situation exposure, situation 1, constitutes the baseline if the tailing are not removed. The total dose for the current living condition at pure dose shaft performance settlement is estimated to be maximum 4.46 millisievert per annum at the chosen receptor points. This is within the reference level of 1 to 20 millisievert per annum set by the NEA and therefore considering acceptable. The remediation activity includes the removal of the tailing and thus will create an additional impact to the residents. This impact was assessing through 3 scenarios. Scenario number 2 and 3, 10-ton truck will be used and the resident will be exposed to 3 or 2 8-hour of tailing removal impact per day for a year. We can see that the tailing removal scenario 2 and 3 result in dose higher than the dose limit if the radon contribution is added and are not acceptable. Scenario number 4 includes the removal of the tailing for 8 hours by day for 15 days, plus the remediation of the footprint by the addition of virgin salt for further 8 hours per day for 5 days. It was found that the dose exposure will comply with the regulatory limit and furthermore, the scenario will be cost effective. The cost service was also estimated and the additional increase in evitable risk was negligible. Following the recommendation of the FCRL, it was decided to proceed to the remediation activities and to issuing certificate of registration to private companies specialized in the cleaning and removal of the contaminated material. Whatever the task was more complicated as anticipated, my colleague Teresa will explain more.